ZORGAMAZOO by Robert Paul Weston. Chapter 1. A Shadowy Form. Here's a story that's stranger than strange. Before we begin, you might want to arrange a blanket, a cushion, a comfortable seat, and maybe some cocoa and something to eat. I'll warn you, of course, before we commence. My story is eerie and full of suspense, brimming with danger and narrow escapes, and creatures of many remarkable shapes. Dragons and ogres and gorgons and more, and creatures you've not even heard of before. In faraway places, there's plenty of those, and menacing villains to tingle your toes. So ready your mettle and steady your heart. It's time for my story's mysterious start. We begin in a subway under the ground, where people and trains go rolling around, in hurrying haste and scurrying mobs wandering off to their ponderous jobs. Much of the time they would linger in vain. They would stand in the station awaiting a train. They would push in between the ticket machines like fish huddled into a tin of sardines. They clutch at the purses and cases they brought, anxious and angry and overly wrought. Hoping a train would come barreling past, pick them up quick and dash away fast. There's one little girl who waited as well, a girl by the name of Katrina Cottrell. While everyone else was busy or bored, this one little girl should not be ignored, for unlike the crowd, she was never inert. Her senses were sharp and awake and alert. She kept to herself, but she wasn't alone. She was joined by her guardian, Miss Carbone, who stood with Katrina, clutching her hand, in the flickering light of the passenger stand. They were hunched near the tunnel of mortar and brick, where the lighting was dim and the shadows were thick, where Katrina was curious, squinting her eye, where she could swear that a creature was shuffling by. At first it was vague, just a shadowy form, like the ship in the midst of a fog or a storm, so she gazed with a steady and faltering stare, to determine for certain, was anything there? Yet try as she might, the tunnel was black, obscuring the path of the train and the track. She was nearly ready to give up her search, when the subway arrived in a lumbering lurch. It showered the station in glimmering light, and that's when she saw something scurry from sight. "Hey, Crabby," she whispered. "There's something I see. It's smaller than you, but it's bigger than me. It's loping around in the tunnel, I swear. It looked like a warthog, or maybe a bear." "Don't call me Crabby," spat Miss Carbone, in a violent and rather vociferous tone. "You're a fool and a fibber," the woman accused. "Such ludicrous lying is never excused. You see, my good reader, this had happened before, since Katrina Cottrell, well, she loved to explore. On her way home from school, whenever she could, she would cut through the park or a forested wood, and more often than not, in some part of the park where no one else went until after dark, she would see something strange, something utterly odd, and something hulking or hairy, and possibly clawed. She would then run home with a story to tell, where Miss Carbone would do nothing but yell. "Katrina!" she'd holler. "You ignorant thing! Your brain must be made out of paper and string. All this rot about yetis and monsters and walks, they're nothing but lies, they're nothing but crocks." Well, Crabby, you see, was a bit of a witch. In the pit of her heart there was a serious glitch. She didn't have time for fanciful things like parrots and gadgets and creatures and kings. She believed that a girl should be perfectly prim and shouldn't be guided by whimsy and whims. As such, she was certain that Katrina was nuts, too lively, too feisty, and too full of guts. Yet the two were related. Yes, that much was true. But how they were linked, well, nobody knew. Their relation was distant, hard to define, yet connected somehow by a family line. Like 41st cousins, 10 times removed, the bloodline, however, had never been proved. And so once again they had come to collide, with each of them taking their opposite side. They stood near the tracks where under the ground Katrina thought beasties were creeping around. "But Crabby," she cried, "it really is true. It looked like a thing that escaped from the zoo. But I'm not a dullard, and I'm not a dunce. You gotta believe me. Oh, if only this once." Miss Carbone said nothing at first. Her face went all flushed as if ready to burst. Then her lips twisted into sort of a grin, and she wrangled Katrina by the ear and the chin. Leaning in close so Katrina could hear, she whispered maliciously into her ear. "You listen to me. This lying must end. When we get home, here's what I intend. I will call my friend, the lobotomy doc, a talented man at the butchery block. His scalpels are polished to shimmering sign. He'll slice from your eye to the top of your spine. He'll cut from your brow to the top of your head. Your brain he'll replace with something instead. Something quite nice, like a pastry or cake, or why not a succulent caribou steak. Your original brain he will lock in a box. That's what they do, those lobotomy docs. Before the poor girl could swallow her fear, Miss Carbone gave a tug on her ear. So wriggling and wriggling a wincing train, Katrina was bullied inside of the train. The subway struck up with its clackety-clacks, rolling into a tunnel and over the tracks. Katrina sat quietly watching the wall. It was smeared with graffiti and scandalous scrawl. She was searching in the dark for the thing she had seen. What was it, she thought? What could have it been? At first there was nothing that seemed out of place, but everything changed when she made out a face. It was surely a face she could never forget. It peered from the dark with an odd silhouette. It wasn't a hog or a bear or a cat, though perhaps if all three were stirred in a vat, muddled and mixed in something anew, a wildebeest, polar bear, antelope, Sioux. There were horns on its head, all twisty and curled. They shot from its noggin, they spiraled and swirled. Its shoulders, however, were stalky and stout, and a thicket of whiskers hung down from its snout. But perhaps the most shocking, incredible sight was when the creature leaned into the light, and so believed that it wasn't a lie. But this creature, this thing, was wearing a tie. The train sped ahead, and the shadows were back. The creature was lost in the Stygian black. It was gone in an instant, gone in a blink, but not before giving Katrina a wink. She turned to her guardian, and there at her side, she was certain the truth could not be denied. "You see now," she said, "you can't disagree. You looked at the very same window as me. A creature, a thing. It was just like I said. Perhaps there are more of them farther ahead." But Katrina was thoroughly irate. She spat when she spoke in a fury and hate. "A creature!" she shrieked. "A mysterious beast! You're crazy, Katrina, and that's saying the least. Will you listen to me, you insufferable brat? What you probably saw was only a rat. So I've had quite enough. You tell me no more. Your lies and your tales and your fibs I abhor. If you tell me again, I shall do it myself. I'll scoop at your brain for a spot on my shelf." "But didn't you see it? Its horns and its beard? And he winked, I believe, which was awfully weird." Now, Miss Cardrone shrieked like a bell. "Now you listen up, Miss Katrina Cottrell. I'm the boss around here. I'm your guardian, see? Why else would your parents have sent you to me?" "Well, I'll tell you why, because I know what's best. That's why they made such a special request. I'll be the one to raise you up right, so you learn to be quiet and nice and polite. So from now on, you pests will not say a word. You'll say nothing silly or strange or absurd. You'll be a good girl and you'll do what I say. You'll shut off your mouth for the rest of your day." So Katrina was silent. She made not a sound, but her eyes remained actively darting around, watching the leaf of the wandering track, examining close every cranny and crack, in search of the thing that had briefly appeared, all hairy and horns and a whiskery beard. A creature, a beastie, a troll or a gnome, but she saw nothing more, all the way home.